Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 376, Divine Origin and Craft of the Herbalist. Link in the description, of course, to my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links to my books blog. 76 pages, so this is an intermediate to short read. Extremely dense, extremely interesting, and it takes you through herbal medicine and the use of minerals, and basically through religious history, all the way up from antiquity, far antiquity. We're talking thousands and thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt, Samaria, Babylon, Assyria, up through Greece, up through Rome, up through other cultures, to the semi-modern period as it was then, the Islamic world, the Ethiopian groups, the Copts, and others. It's also got illustrations in it, and some of them are transcribed from cuneiform and hieroglyphs actually on the subject. Now, there are numerous species mentioned. It is an herbal work. But this is more about the intertwining of religious ritualism with medicine. Again, largely herbal, although it does speak to some degree about other things, like the Asclepion, or Asclepius, the idea of the healing temple. Surgical procedures around the time of ancient Greece begin to advance a bit more than they had been. Intertwined, of course, with ancient Egypt. They were trepanning and doing things like that as well. Reaches a peak in Rome. Stumbles a bit during the Middle Ages in most parts of the world, and then resurges later in the Renaissance. It's an interesting subject, but the idea is that for the most part, until very modern times, and technically even now in some cases, with alternative medicine at least, you'll find a religious component to homeopathy, generally speaking, in many cases, or a pseudo-religious one like hippies and stuff, separatist movements. Rituals and medicine were essentially combined. They were joined at the hip. They're not exactly the same thing. Like, for instance, and I think it was Babylon, or Assyria rather, when the doctor would go to treat a patient, they were accompanied effectively by a priest that was doing incantations and reading the signs, and then there was a third individual labeled, I believe, a bard actually, or Baru actually, I believe in the Babylonian sense. That would along the way look at animals and plants and even piles of shit and stuff, and look for signs of recovery versus death, the kind of illness and stuff, and they would comport with one another and then deliver a verdict and attempt to cure the patient. Typically, religious ritualism was twain with medicine in ancient times. In Egypt, for example, among those who did surgery, etc., dispensed prescriptions, you had, for a while there, I can't remember the dynasty it was most common in, they had full-on incense tables where they would burn incense for different gods and purposes while the treatment or consultation was being done. In ancient Greece, again, there was an element of worship. I did a work on incubation, actually, which the initial archaic definition of that in ancient Greece was to incubate oneself in the temple, to sort of dwell there, to commune with the god in hopes of delivering a cure. This ritualism, again, overlaps mostly with herbalism because in ancient times, herbs and minerals were effectively what they had. And then you have quack cures that are like, burned and powdered horse's hooves and spleen of a rabbit and eye of a bat. That sort of Hollywood depiction of witchcraft actually deals more with antiquity than it does anything from the contemporary burning times period. By then, most people realize that those cures didn't work, and you're not very far out from the Thomsonian field of herbal simples by that point, at which they believe lobelia actually was a cure-all. So very interesting work, highly recommended. If you're interested in any of the main ancient cultures, from Samaria on through even the Ethiopian church at Axum that spawns long after, the Middle Ages had already begun almost. If you're interested in that, or into herbal medicine, the history of medicine at all, highly recommended. Very, very good work, fully sourced, illustrations, transcriptions, everything condensed into a very small number of pages. So one of the best works actually on religious history, oddly too, despite the fact that herbalism is technically the main subtopic within. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books blogs. It'll go in the herbal category, of course. Peruse it at your leisure. There's plenty more available where that came from. That's about all. Peace out.